There we go. All right, I hope that's working. Can everybody hear me? Got people showing up. I'm going to open up the chat. Here we go. There it goes. Okay, now it is open, so if you make a comment, I'll be able to see it. Just enjoyed a wonderful time at Clint's Reptile Room. If you haven't gone there or had to face, I would highly suggest you do it. It's really, really cool. The awesome octopus is here. And Frank the Tank, greetings and welcome. So, had a lot of fun there. We got to, of course, introduce members of my family to the emerald tree skinks that hadn't met them before. And we interacted a lot with some of the larger snakes, with some boas, reticulated pythons, ball pythons, a black pine snake, which was really cool, as well, as well as Bubba Chunk and Nipper, the smaller common snapping turtle. So that was really cool. I'm having trouble, to be honest, seeing the names. Let me see if this helps. I'm just going to pop my reading glasses on, see if it makes a difference at this distance on the screen. I think it will. Yep, it does. So I can see we have Pets Are My Life, Toilet Pete, Eric Clark, and Aaron Culp. Welcome. So, good amount of people in the stream. I wanted to address some Patreon questions today, as well as questions that you might have about Clint's Reptiles or about anything else that is relevant to the channel. So we will start out. Thank you for the well wishes. Last week I did miss the live stream. I was not feeling well. I'm feeling much better now and pretty much back to normal. So thank you for that. And Cappy had a question about lighting an isopod. So we'll dive into that. This was on last week's, and of course I didn't get to do last week, so I figured I'd answer that to start out with. So, Cappy says, hope you feel better. I have a question for the next show. There are tinted night light bulbs for observing nocturnal reptiles. Do you know if isopods like these, or at least don't mind them? I want to be able to watch my isopods while they're active, but they don't like my overhead light. And that is a great point. It is difficult to view certain isopods because when you put a bright light on them, they react rather negatively, and they're negatively phototactic, so they will actively flee the light, and some species are more like that than others. For example, Silisticus convexus, Porcelio dilatatus. There's some that are really reactive to the light, and there are others too, of course. Rubber duckies tend not to like bright light. There are others that don't mind as much. For example, zebra pillbugs, Armadillidae maculatum. Another one that seems to be, relatively unfazed by the light is Porcelio dairy cow, Porcelio milkback, some of the others. Just some examples to throw out there. So what do you do with that? How do you view them? And this idea of using the night light bulbs for observing nocturnal reptiles, well, there are a couple of different types of lights that you'll encounter in that capacity. Lights for nocturnal reptiles, you'll find the lights that produce a decent amount of heat, and part of the purpose of them is actually producing heat. And you will also get other ones that are night lights. They're small LED lights, and the purpose is producing fairly dim light, but it's still going to allow you to view it. And they're often, it's kind of a blue light or a purple light or a red light, something like that, and fairly dim. So those are the two different types. I would say that the reptile lights that produce heat in general can be problematic with isopods. One, because you may not have them in a container where such a light is suitable, and it could pose a fire hazard. Two, the heat produced by them could be a negative for the isopods, depending on the species. And three, perhaps most importantly, the heat they're producing is likely to dry out the air in the substrate pretty fast. So those might pose some problems. However, if you're going to look at the LED lights, which produce very little heat, you might have something there. And I would say that when I saw your question, I figured out I had to try this. So I've done some preliminary experiments, Cappy, about this. And what I'm going to do next week for the live stream, on the live stream, I have a room without any windows or anything like that, so I can get pretty dark in there. And I have a red light. And so next week, I'm going to set up the red light with some isopod containers with a few different species in them, transparent containers you can look right through, and maybe some other containers too that we can lift the lids off of. and we're going to see how the light affects them. So I'll leave them in there for a good long time so they're used to the dark in that room. Maybe feed them right before the stream, and then use the red light. And I've tested my iPad with the red light, so it should be able to pick up, we should be able to see what's going on, and we'll see how they react in the red light. And I will make sure that there are some isopods there that are fairly reactive to other forms of light and see. My preliminary experience with the red LED light has been that isopods are less reactive to that than they are to, say, a white light or a full spectrum light. So far so good, and we'll test it out in next week. All right, so that was a great question, and we'll now go on to some of the other questions here. So, Eric has a question. If you haven't already streamed, I have a question regarding container size for isopods. I purchased 8 little dudes, put in a shoebox size Sterilite box, but then worried they couldn't find each other to breed. I would find them all by themselves all over the place, not using their hide. I moved them back to their deli cup they came in. Is there an optimum size of enclosure for extremely small cultures while it gets going? Thanks. This is a great question, Eric. And I've addressed this a little bit in other videos, but I'm happy to address it some more here. Usually a 6-quart Sterilite box is a pretty great size. And I would say, in general, when you're starting with a small culture, it's not a bad size to work with. However, you do get isopods that have the issue that you mentioned. I've seen it. And I would say that well, how can I say this? I've seen the problems, like with my rubber duckies. I had rubber duckies. I originally put them in a 6-quart container. I had about 10 of them. And in a 6-quart container, they were doing okay for quite a while. They did well for months and months. No diebacks, but no real reproduction either. And I was a little concerned about that. And I talked to Dan Vivas, who's the one from whom I got my original rubber duckies. And he said, maybe put them in something smaller. So I did. And I also got a few more rubber duckies after I had had some die off. So I never lost all of my originals, but I lost some of them. And he said, putting them in a smaller container makes sense. So I put them in a 7-ounce little ventilated deli cup with substrate and everything, of course, and with a few more isopods. So there are about half a dozen in there. And after a few months, they started reproducing. So there can be something to the idea of using a smaller container size to get them breeding. With my Armadillidium vulgare Punta Cana, same kind of container. I purchased them in a little 7-ounce Superior Shipping Supplies ventilated deli cup, left them in there until I saw reproduction, moved them out. Now I have them in a 16-quart bin, but I moved them from the 7-ounce once I saw reproduction to the 6-quart, and once that started to get overly full, I moved them into a 16-quart. So it's not a bad idea. The main concerns I have, I'll point out 2 concerns that I have. One is making sure that the isopods, if they are species that benefit greatly from a humidity gradient, that it's more difficult in a smaller container. So rather than using a really small container like about that big, footprint about that big, you might want to go just a little bigger than a 6-quart, but a longer container so it's easier to create a humidity gradient. Do your mossy side and your dry side. Just a longer container, but maybe still smaller than 6-quart. So maybe, say, a 2-quart container that's long and low. That can help with that. Another thing you can do is just keep in mind you're not going to keep certain isopods in there. So isopods that really need a really strong humidity gradient, you might not want to put it there, especially large ones, like the large Porcellio, like Porcellio expansus or something, really wouldn't thrive in a small container like that. Too small can be bad, but small enough can be good. I've also done that with Porcellionides pruinosus. You can put them in a smaller container to get them to breed and then boost them up. And that works pretty well for those too. I did have a disaster happen by putting them in a smaller container. Just keep in mind that you're going to have, especially if you have shallow substrate and a high amount of ventilation in one of those containers, they can dry out fast. And I did once lose a colony because all the other colonies had deeper substrate and or lower ventilation than this one, and that colony died out because it suddenly dried out and was really fast, and I was trying to keep up with it, but I just kind of missed it. So those are a couple of concerns I would have, but that should help hopefully answer your question. It is a great question, and let me know. So Greetings to Newt and Mark and Cody, Scott's Animal Adventures, Clog Nog, Theropod Hunter. And Scott's Animal Adventures, I do agree with you on the Arcadia Jungle Dawns. They produce a decent amount of heat. So you have to be careful with that. That's true, and many of the lights do. So that's when I'm thinking of LED, I'm talking one that has like maybe one LED diode in it for a 10, 20 gallon tank kind of size. You're right. A light bank of LEDs is going to produce a decent amount of heat, and it's probably not the best option. So I appreciate that. And Newt, good question. What I'm probably going to do during the stream, just to clarify that, because an entire stream in red light would probably bug most people, is I'm going to do it as a StreamYard stream. And so I will jump to my red cam for, 5-10 minutes, something like that, during the stream. So I'll start the stream out here, something like this, and then I'll go over to my red cam, use that for 5 or 10 minutes, whatever we decide, and then back to normal. So, good point. Oh, Spirobolus Theropod Hunter, you're getting your Millipedes. Excellent. Oh, Clognog, you got some tree frogs in your turtle pool. That's awesome. And Scott's Animal Adventures. That's a good point. I don't think red light would be a great light to use above isopods long term. I think for short term viewing, it's probably not a big deal. So the video we're going to do next week for 5-10 minutes under red light, probably fine. But yeah, it's not something I would necessarily say would be good 24/7. So pets are my life. Put your starter pack in a 10 quart. Is that good? It depends on the species. It depends on the setup. 10 quart can totally work. But some species are really prolific. Some species are better at finding each other, and also how you put the setup together may help bring them together or encourage them to kind of spread out. So, yeah. So Jackson Manning, how's the journey of breeding blue death-finning beetles going? Well, it has been successful in that I'm able to produce a lot of larvae. I have successfully induced pupation, and I've produced a couple of adults. As far as producing large amounts, I have not done that. I have taken a break not from breeding them, they're still producing eggs, they're still producing larvae. But as far as incubating larvae, I've taken a break for a little while because I needed to make room for the baby snakes that I'm raising, the baby garter snakes. So I'm not collecting larvae to put in the incubation chamber. However, once the baby snakes are all in new homes, which is going to happen soon. Whoa! Sorry, this little kitten just jumped right up my leg and with her claws. So that kind of surprised me, as you might imagine. This is our new energetic little kitten, Bug. Her name is Bug, and she's actually a little full of energy. She's intense, let me say it. She's cute and she's friendly, but she's intense, so hence leaping up my leg without the slightest provocation, right? So there, Bug, you can say hi to everybody. So she is the second cat of the household. So back to the other bugs we were talking about, the blue death-finning beetles. So likely in the fall, unless I do get a fall clutch, which is a possibility with snakes, and I'll need to change my plans, I will collect a bunch of large larvae from the incubation, or from the adult breeding tank, and incubate those to see if we can get some more beetles. And there's Cullen with feeding your isopods. Excellent. Oh yes, we can do. You can go by dimension. Yeah, 6 by 4 by 4 inches is great to start out with a lot of them, except for the really larger isopods. Okay. And oh yes, and I do have to be careful when I say red cam. I just mean red light camera isopods. Sorry, that could mean a lot of other things too. All right, so. Oh, nope, we're not doing that. No biting. She's learning the boundaries. Okay. And Jackson, yes, it's fun to. It's fun that they're breeding, and I think one of the coolest things about them, Jackson, about the fact that they're breeding and I was able to be successful is that documenting the process has led to other people contacting me and said, I followed your instructions, I followed your techniques for breeding them, which of course I learned from other people, and I've got my beetles breeding. So this is lovely because it's increasing the amount of captive bred beetles in the hobby, not only the ones that I produced, which are a fairly insignificant amount, but they're also, no, you ready to go down? You can go down. You just need to be nice about it. Nope. Here. There we go. Okay. There we go. That other people are breeding them and succeeding. And so it's spreading around in the hobby. Love that. So, Ian Alicia Perry. Glad you were able to catch one. So, Bren Stack. My isopods devour freeze-dried fish, but only once in a while. Is that okay? Yeah. It's good to give them variety. I'm not exactly sure how the vitamin thiaminase works with, or vitamin thiamine works with isopods, but some fish and the dried minnows that are often sold for use with isopods, I believe, contain thiaminase, which is an enzyme that destroys thiamine, or thiamine, depending on how you pronounce it, which is a B vitamin, and it's vital for many organisms. I'm not sure how it works in the metabolism of isopods, to be honest, but in some animals it can cause problems if they have too much thiaminase. It will cause neurological issues and then death in snakes, for example. So I would say if you offer them only once in a while, that's good anyway, because they're going to get some variety and they're not going to get too much of, potential issue causing things like thiaminase. So, though I don't know how thiaminase affects isopods specifically, could possibly be an issue, and so just offering them occasionally is good. Okay. So pets are my life. 10 count of A. vulgare in a 10-quart bin with all the hides close together in the middle, leaf litter on one side and moss on the other. Probably okay as long as you, wow, she just climbed right up me again. You are full of energy, aren't you? We're not biting. We're not doing that. So there you go. Sounds pretty good to me as long as you can see that they're interacting. If you see that they're always in different places and they never congregate in the same spot, that could potentially be an issue. Oh, Cullen, getting some Armadillium Croatian giants, Armadillo officinalis. That's a species I'd love to keep. Not on my permit, but I would love to keep it. And Scott's Animal Adventures. Would you ever get an isopod fresh protein? Yes, I would, and I have. I have given them, the other day, sorry. You can't play with the cords. Sorry, I had to scoot the cord out of the way so she didn't eat it. Hey, Xander? Yes. Can you come get your phone charger here? She was trying to eat it. Okay.
She's trying to go after it.
Yep. So yeah, I give my isopods fresh protein on occasion. I have given them, for example, today I had a peach fuzzy mouse that my garter snakes didn't want to eat. They were too busy at the moment, so they weren't into it. And I gave it to I gave several of them to different isopods. To my Porcellio ornatus, they ate it. Dairy cows ate it. Milkbacks ate it. So yeah, no, I've done that on occasion, and things like that. And they seem to do well with that occasional. It's not something I'd give them every day, obviously, but occasionally it's good for them. So Scott's Animal Adventures, sunny stick insects. I'm not sure if I've heard of that type. Sounds interesting. Yep, so Frank, you're giving a raw chicken ring. Sorry about the freezing. I'm not sure what was going on there, everybody. Yeah, reasonable amounts. That's the key. Definitely I won't give them every day. And keep in mind when I'm giving one peach fuzzy mouse to my isopod colony, there are hundreds, if not more than hundreds in the colony. So they're going to eat it so fast it'll be gone. Like there's going to be nothing left. So it's definitely moderate amounts. John Mateo, hello, welcome. And pets are my life. Yeah, if you were to add another 10 count to that, don't eat my wire. Hey, Xander. This little girl's trying to eat my mic wire. Can you help me? Oh, sorry. This cat's going nuts. She can't eat my mic wire. Hey, Xander? Xander? Can you help me?
Okay.
She's trying to eat my mic wire. Can you put her back in the bedroom?
You're so naughty.
Okay, here we go. Sorry. She's having fun, but that's a little too much fun when she gets to the mic wire. And Jackson, I hope you're able to breed the Blue Death Fanny beetles. Definitely should try it. And Scott's Animal Adventures, how do you work out the best size of protein? I don't know, at this point I kind of eyeball it. I was teaching my daughter about that earlier today because she is in charge of feeding fish food to my isopods, and I have her give them fish food a couple times a week, or some other food, generally fish food. And I was showing her, you have to look at the size of the colony and how fast they'll finish it. And if you have the colony swarm in and cover the food within a short time and it's gone within a few hours or a day or so, then you know you haven't given them too much. If you put it in and then there's a bunch of it left over the next day, definitely need to cut back. Yep. So feeding dairy cows a whole Thanksgiving turkey with a mega colony. They would, I bet they would do that. You'd have to have a really big colony, but I bet you could do it. And there's Young Lad, welcome. Yep. Well, Cullen, that's a great question about the restrictions on transporting and importing various insects and arthropods. Are they excessive or do they make some sense, considering agricultural concerns and whatnot? I think it's better to be safe than sorry in general. Certainly, there are many of us, myself included, that can feel frustrated by certain rules, but I really think it's important to try to abide by them because, one, it gives the hobby a better reputation, and we're more likely to be trusted in the future and be able to continue keeping things and hopefully to be able to approve some things if we are trustworthy as a hobby. I think there are cases where, for example, I don't think certain isopods, especially ones that are exclusively tropical from Southeast Asia, are going to be issues in, South Dakota or something where it gets far too cold for them to survive. But by following the rules, we're saying, well, we understand the reasoning behind the rules and we are responsible. Therefore, I think we're more likely to get things approved in the future. I certainly hope so. And yeah, as far as the permits go, I don't know what the permitting is like outside the US, but that's how it works in the US with isopods and quite a few other regulated invertebrates. Not everything is regulated. In fact, it's been nice that certain things have been deregulated fairly recently, including some beetles, some roaches, things like that are deregulated, but isopods are regulated. And there are quite a few that you can work with, ones that are already established in the US for the most part, fairly freely if you have the permits, or you can get them across state lines fairly easily. And then there's some that are more difficult, but you have to follow certain guidelines, a little bit more strict. But Eric Clark just got the first permit. Congratulations on that. And so Theropod Hunter, talking about regal jumping spiders, Phidippus regius. I think that one and Phidippus audax are probably pretty similar as far as keeping them. I've kept both, and they're both, as long as you can provide them with good diet, which largely consists of appropriately sized flies, and you can make sure you have a proper enclosure, you're hydrating them properly. They do really well. Oh, Young Lad, that's awesome. 7 more streams and your newest video, and you'll have finally watched all my vids. That is awesome. I should have a t-shirt for people who have done that. I really should. And yeah, any suggestions for the design and the picture that should be on that t-shirt? I think that's pretty awesome. So thank you for doing that. You probably single-handedly improved my algorithm results, Young Lad, by doing that. And maybe I really should make a t-shirt for that. Let's see. Moon over Miami. I know isopods eat fingernails. What about toenails? Yep, they will do toenails because it's the same stuff. It's keratin, and they will eat it. They will. Have you been to any expos since COVID? I know I have been to at least one. I'm trying to think if I've been to more than one. I think only one. right now. All I can think of is one expo that I've been to since COVID, but is that right? Yeah, I think it's only been one. It's last time I picked up some rubber duckies and some, let's see, what did I pick up? Some Dubrovnik, Armadillium klugi Dubrovnik, some Porcelli ornatus high yellow, and some Oreo crumbles, Porcellionides prunosus Oreo crumbles, as well as a part of my PVC enclosure for my snakes. And I can't quite remember what else I picked up, if I did pick up anything else. Let's see. Yeah, pets are my life. Sometimes it's hard to, keep certain things with other people in the house that don't tolerate them. That's true. So newt scamander, will they eat hair to them? That's a good question. I kind of suspect they would. So I kind of suspect they would. I haven't tried it. And I kind of expect also that hair is more likely to have things like products in it than your fingernails would, I would expect. So it might be a little bit more problematic, but if you had well-rinsed hair, I sort of expect they would, because it's basically the same stuff. It's keratin too. So interesting. Question, newt scamander. Okay, Cullen, I'm not entirely sure with the A. gigas millipedes in the US. I believe that they're regulated in the sense that they cannot be imported anymore. They used to be able to be collected in Africa, imported here, and then sold in pet stores. And I don't think that can happen legally anymore. But I think there's a captive bred population in the US, and it's sort of a gray area there, at least in my understanding. I don't understand how the laws work there. It may well be that there are still permits required technically to ship them, but they're not being enforced all that much, but I'm not entirely sure. And Frank the Tank bowl jumping spiders are very, very similar. The colors are a little different, the size is a little different, but even individual variation can change that too. And they're great, the bowl jumping spiders. I've had some great ones. And thank you, young lad, buying the bug burger from one of my affiliate links. That's awesome. Oh, Frank the Tank, where are you again? I can't remember. Finding some jumping spiders that haven't been properly documented. That's awesome. Recently, if you've seen my Instagram, if you follow my Instagram feed, you'll know that I found a Phidippus johnstoni in my backyard, along with a Phidippus audax brillante, and it was a male Phidippus johnstoni, which have this beautiful red color, like a red color, and it was trying to court the female, the johnstoni, not johnstoni. The male was the johnstoni, the female was the brillante. It's pretty cool. Newt scamander. Let's do it. We'll just have a big vat of dairy cows in there, and they just toss all the extra hair in there in all the barbershops and hair salons. And Hair Wade, that is so cool. Your jumper in your paludarium is keeping the flies out. That's awesome, or at least eaten. Interesting, Frank. That's very cool. So in New Jersey, you found some jumpers that haven't been properly documented. So, Johnsel, any updates on the Lavis Milkback and Oranges project? Nothing's happening. In other words, I've got oranges in there. I've got milkbacks in there. It's been almost a year, I think, and no evidence that they're able to interbreed. So I think it's just the same. Milkbacks breeding with oranges has the same result as dairy cows breeding with oranges. In other words, they will try to mate. I've seen dairy cows trying to mate with oranges, but it doesn't result in any fertile offspring. So there you go. That's what I've seen so far. So Cullen Batzel, what is an insect or arthropod on the top of your wish list? Oh, there's so many. So many. Where could I start with? Most of them I can't keep right now, but I would like to keep someday. If we're talking non-isopods, because there's a ton of isopods I'd love to keep that I don't have yet. But if we're talking other arthropods that I'd like to keep sometime, I miss having a vinegaroon. I want one of those. I think a desert hairy scorpion would be cool. I think someday I want to get a permit for phasmids or stick insects, but I have to have a facility that will allow for that. I don't currently have a facility that will allow for that, so in the same vein, once I get a permit for it, there are lots of beetles I would like to keep. If I could pick any right now though, honestly, again, I would need a permit for it, so and you have a facility for that. I would love to get some of the Lampyridae or the eladerids, probably some of the glowing click beetles specifically. Those are eladerids, click beetles, and they glow, and it's fantastic. Bioluminescence has always been fascinating to me. The fact that they can be kept in captivity, they can be bred in captivity successfully, and they continue to glow multi-generationally. That's probably what I'd pick. Invertebrate Dude's been working with some of those. I'd probably pick one of the species that he has been working with. They're fantastic. If you haven't followed Invertebrate Dude on Instagram, YouTube, check out what he's got going on. It's probably what I just can't do it right now. So Frank the Tank, that spider sounds awesome. All those colors, that's fantastic. So Theropod Hunter, you found 50 plus earwigs in your mason bee launch box. Wow, that's a lot of earwigs. Let's see, pets are my life. Have you ever found, bought isopods from Isoflora Isopods? Not that I can think of. Theropod Hunter, camel spiders have become popular. They don't seem to do very well in terms of survival or captive breeding. Are they doing well? I've heard of some that will breed, but most species seem tough to breed. Are they getting that going in the UK? So Ian Alicia Perry, are you able to ship inverts during high summer temps? If they're not extreme, yes. I start to worry when the temperature is over like 98 or something when I'm shipping. I do use cold packs. I do use express shipping. That helps. You know, if it's 100 degrees, I'm probably not going to ship at all. But with like cold packs and the express shipping, it works pretty well. And I have been. In fact, I shipped out a package today with a cold pack in it. Express shipping, that's all I use to ship live critters at this time of year. Usually July and August, and sometimes June. This June, it got pretty hot. And we were having other problems with the post office anyway, so I can't really use priority because it's too slow right now. So, yep, shipped out some today. Yeah, sometimes the permits don't work. It kind of depends on what you're doing. Some species are a lot easier to get permits for than others. That's true. And I found click beetles around here too. I just have never found the glowing ones. I don't think they get this far north. Oh, and there's Moonbuzz. Been a while. Welcome back. Yeah, camel spiders can get stressed out and die. I remember Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace had a video about a camel spider, or sulfugid sun spider, lots of different names. He had it for, I think it was a year, and he posted a video about it, and it was doing fairly well. And shortly after he posted the video, apparently is when it died, but that was kind of a record there. Some stink bugs too. When you say stink bugs, do you mean the true bugs that are stink bugs, or do you mean the beetles, the Tenebrioniid desert beetles that are also sometimes called stink bugs? So pets are my life. Breeder had a gem mix including Santa Lucia and Punta Cana localities of Bay Vulgare. Can those even interbreed, or does it ruin the locality? So if you have a gem mix with Santa Lucia and Punta Cana in it, they can interbreed, yes. They're the same species, and unlike, Porcella laevis dairy cow and Porcella laevis orange, they can indeed interbreed. But from the standpoint of locality, once you put them in a gem mix, all localities, basically goes out the window. You can say this gem mix contains, individuals that are descended from Punta Cana or whatever. You can say, in this mix are Punta Cana, Santa Lucia, and so on. But then you could never take isopods back out of it and try to isolate certain phenotypes and say, this is Punta Cana. It's not anymore. But you can certainly market it as gem mix and sell it. Does that make sense? You just can't market it as a locality anymore. So yeah, they will certainly interbreed. I have a gem mix that includes all kinds of stuff. It's got Punta Cana in it. It's got Magic Potion. It's got Orange Vigor. It's whatever. So yeah, you can do that. And Jackson Manning, yeah, the desert beetles are so cool. I have not seen any this year. This has been a crummy year for that, to see the tenebrionid beetles around here. I'm hoping to see some when I'm down in Arizona. Just, if those of you who haven't heard, I'm actually going down to visit Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace and Jesse, Shapes in Nature. I'm gonna go down there and visit in Arizona soon, very soon. So I'm gonna be down there this month, and I'm going to be making videos about it, so stay tuned for that. I'm really excited. Also, keep a look at my Instagram feed. Someone's breeding Dynasties Hylas online. I'm not sure I know that one, Cullen. Interesting. Anyone ever had a gestoy with full yellow bodies? Like the entire body is yellow? Like a high yellow Porcelia ornatus? I have not. That sounds fascinating. Crystals, Pets, and Plants, hello, welcome. So, Moombas, you got tons of the tenebrionids in Arizona, and Schonmeister, you haven't seen any either, huh? I see quite a few of them, and I don't know if it's a really dry year, which it is, if that's what's reducing their numbers, or if it's just I haven't been there at the right times, because I can drive 5 minutes and be in a canyon where there are tenebrionid beetle, desert adapted, the desert clown beetles, the Eleodes genus, running around. At least a couple different species. I see Obscurus, which, get pretty big, and I see Hispalabris, which are a little smaller, and I see probably a few other species. So I just haven't this year. My daughter did, though. She was up there doing an activity with some friends, and she saw one. So they're around. Maybe I've been there at the wrong time. So Ian Alicia, interested in hearing more about earwigs for anyone who's kept them. I always thought they were very neat. Have you heard about the giant species of earwig from the island of St. Helena? Like what's it called? The maritime, I don't remember exactly. Maritime earwig or something like that? Maritime giant earwig. They're from the same island where you can find the spiky yellow isopod, Pseudo-Aureola atlantica, I think is the scientific name, which is a crazy isopod. Looks like it's got yellow Christmas trees coming out of its back, kind of. It's really weird looking. Very cool. And also there's an island off the coast of that island. It's like a bird sanctuary covered in bird guano that is the home of the largest pseudoscorpion species. We talked about that in our pseudoscorpion live stream that I had with Adam and Kyle a while back. So, have you ever kept long-legged desert darkling beetles? Which species is that? I have kept desert darkling beetles with long legs, but I'm not sure not sure I've kept that species. And Cullen, shame there's not a Porcelia ornatus lottery mix that I'm aware of in the hobby, considering any popular morphs available. That is interesting. That's an interesting point, and I've thought about that on occasion. With them being localities, would they interbreed or not? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Interesting idea, though, and I wonder what they would turn out looking like. And Schonmeister, yeah, it really has been weird, so hopefully that works out. Oh, Alice Moreno. Hey, thanks for all the isopods I bought for me. Despite all the shipping issues, my colony, even the dwarf whites, are thriving and started out with less than 10. Awesome. Yeah, I remember that we had a problem, and most of the dwarf whites didn't survive the trip, but it worked out anyway eventually, so that's good. That's good. I'm glad they're doing well for you. Yeah, I hope we get some more rain here. We don't get hardly any lately. Yeah, I think the earwig is now considered extinct, Frank. I think you're right. And yeah, I think it is extinct, but it's a pretty cool earwig. I think they found some evidence of the earwig that was fairly recent, but not recent enough to confirm that it is still alive. But there's some hope it might be, I guess, but it's not very much hope, something like that. It's been a while since I've read into that. But I don't think anybody has live colonies of them. I do think they're considered extinct. It's true. But the isopod is not extinct. It's just in trouble. And the pseudoscorpion is also not extinct. It's still just in trouble. It may become extinct in the future if that island is not protected. And Sean, haven't seen a velvet ant this summer either. Nor have I. And I usually can see them by this time, although more of them show up later in the year. I'm hoping when I go down to Arizona I will see more. I know that Jesse at Shapes in Nature posted about one. He started to see them, so I hope I'm able to see some when I'm down there. I still have one of my velvet ants that I got, was it? I think it might be 3 years ago. It's either 2 or 3 years ago. One of my Dasimutilla vestita, and I have several that I've had for a while. And when I caught, was it 3 years ago or almost 3 years ago? It's something like that. It's crazy. That species lives a long time. It's still doing really well. I wish I'd kept or breed velvet ants. Oh, Stenocara dentata. Okay, theropod hunter. I definitely haven't kept that one. I do believe I've seen pictures of it. I haven't kept that one. So where in Arizona I'm heading? I am heading to an area south of Tucson, Sonoida, I think it's called, and that's the area near Sky Island. Sky Island Adventures is the name that Peter's new business, where he basically does tourism with the twist, because he's showing you all about the critters, the invertebrates, reptiles, that kind of thing in the area. And he has a guest house, so it's kind of like a bed and breakfast, but you go out and do tours with, seeing all the critters. And there's a lot right there on the property, but then they can go to nearby areas as well that are also full of very interesting things to see. So it's kind of a fantastic idea. So Sonoita, Sonoita, I think it's pronounced that way. When I look at it, I always want to say Sonoita, but I don't think it's pronounced that way. So, do you say Kupo or Cupo for your name? Here in Ireland, we have isopod spiders. Do you have them in America? We do, and I believe they were introduced here from Europe, but we do have them. I have them right in my backyard, in fact, and they're pretty interesting spiders. Let's see. So herp diversity just saw velvet ant in Arizona. Awesome. They seem to get them earlier, which makes sense. Warmer climate. So how's your progress with your A. vulgaria midnight gold? I think it was night gold, and they're doing fairly well. I've got some really nice specimens have shown up, and I've sold some of the culls from it that don't have nearly as much pattern, and some of those can turn out to look pretty cool later, and some of them don't. Some of them look just very normal. So, but as far as the ones that I have some that are looking pretty nice. And crystal, I have not kept a velvet spider. I know that Richard at Tarantula Collective just got one just recently, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it's way down south in Arizona. It's something like 45 minutes from the US-Mexico border, which is pretty cool. So, and thank you, Sean. Should be fun. So why is the population falling in Ireland? That's interesting, but in a bad way. Let's see. Okay, and Ashley just posted a response on the Patreon too, but it was to someone else. It wasn't to me. It was someone else who had posted a question, and I already was talking about that question. So Moon over Miami is getting some big airwigs, huh? Interesting. Cupo, okay. So Jackson. Oh, still need to convince your landlord. Interesting. Hopefully that works well. Good luck with that. Pets are my life. What first got you involved in the isopod hobby? Well, it was actually geckos. Geckos. I was keeping geckos in... I was planning on keeping geckos, doing research into keeping geckos. And I think I was also doing some research into keeping hermit crabs. I'm not sure which one was first. It was one of them. But both people keeping geckos and people keeping dart frogs and people keeping hermit crabs were starting to keep isopods with their geckos as bioactive cleaners. And I mean, well, the dart frog people had been doing it for a long time. Dart frog people have been doing this at least since the 90s. And it started to spread up to other places. And I was reading about it. And I said, oh, this is fantastic. And I attended a presentation where they talked about building a dart frog enclosure and using springtails and isopods in there. And that, I don't remember which happened first, to be honest, but it was all part of my research. So I wanted to do some research, of course, before I set anything up. So I settled on setting up a morning gecko bioactive enclosure. It was my first bioactive enclosure because I had fallen in love with morning geckos when I lived in Hawaii because they were everywhere there. And there was a specific tree, for example, where I could go. And I knew that a female would be sitting there in this little hide in the bark of the tree, and there would be eggs there most of the time that she had laid. And, you know, they would come in the house just from outside, and we would just find them all over the trees and things like that. So I thought they were so great, and I wanted to get some. So I got a trio of morning geckos, and I got some isopods to start with. I got the Porcelio Scaber Spanish Orange. I got some dwarf whites. I got some Costa Rican purples, or the dwarf purples. And it turns out that somewhere in the plants or whatever, also some dwarf striped came along. In fact, the dwarf whites came hitchhiking with others. There were not. I didn't get a pure culture of dwarf whites, but I ended up with dwarf whites. So that's how I got started, and that was around 9 years ago or so. Good question. And Ashley Ann, good, you're here. Excellent. I think that you posted on Patreon, but you're responding to someone else, so welcome. And I've heard of, actually, I was reading an article about that so many insect populations are just declining in many places of the world, so it's kind of scary. And Kelly Blood, welcome, and keeping you entertained while you dig in your isopods. Excellent. I can't think of a better way to dig in your isopods than participating in the live stream. That's awesome. So yeah, Moon over Miami. I'm going to go to the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. Yep, the southern, sort of south centrally part of Arizona, south of Tucson. So I will be in that area near Sky Island, or the Sky Islands. Is that what it's called? It's the mountain area. So Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace has Sky Island Adventures. If you haven't followed him on Instagram, I think it's Sky_Island_Adventures. Should check that out. He's got some really cool things. Every time he posts, my eyes grow wide and I think, amazing, I'm going there. I'm going there soon. So check out his Instagram if you haven't already. Check out his YouTube channel too. And I am super excited to go, super excited to see inverts and reptiles and amphibians in the area. There's some fascinating things going on. Let's see, have you ever checked out or seen Daniel? Not sure how to pronounce that last name. Ambule, maybe? Beetle breeding. I have to check that out. Does he do native US beetles, exotic beetles, both? Either way, it sounds cool. So Moon over Miami. You follow a YouTuber that lives there in that part of Arizona? That's cool. So Cupo, do you think you will get pill millipedes if you don't already have them? I don't have any pill millipedes. It is super hard to get. You can't really get pill millipedes in the US. except for some glomeris occasionally, the glomeris genus. And the glomeris genus does okay in captivity sometimes. It's the giant pill millipedes that apparently really don't do well in captivity. And the glomeris are sort of hit or miss. There are people who have gotten them to breed multi-generationally and people who haven't and whatnot. Or people who have some limited success with them and then they die off. But at least the glomeris, there's a fighting chance they could survive. So if I had a permit to get some, I might get some glomeris. I would not get the large ones because they just seem to die. So that's so sad. So Summer Witt, welcome. Glad to have you here. And Crystal, thank you so much. I will look forward to that time in Arizona, and I hope you will all enjoy it too, vicariously through my videos and my posts on Instagram and whatnot. If you don't follow me on Instagram yet, I am on there as Aquarimax Pets, and you can check that out. So that can be a good way to kind of catch some things that I don't necessarily show on my videos. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that Capo, that the Indonesian pill millipedes, the Madagascan pill millipedes, the Indian pill millipedes, there's a lot from different parts, tropical parts of the world, and they just don't seem to be able to survive. So, okay, Cullen, he's Swiss. Some of the more fantastic beetles in the global hobby. Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Like I said, someday I want to get a permit to be able to get some of the more exotic beetles, so that would be really cool. It would be fantastic to learn more about them in the meantime. All right, well, I think I've covered all the questions from Patreon. Does anybody else have any questions that you would like me to address before we close down? We've just got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure if you have something else that we can talk about. We can talk about it before we finish. So Frank, oh, Josh's Frogs is breeding giant African millipedes. That is cool. I did not know that. They do some interesting things with invertebrates. They've branched a little bit more into invertebrates than they used to do. So that's cool. All right, well, I think we're closing down now. Seeing one or two more questions. Lyoko, I'm not sure how to say your name, but I believe you once mentioned potential harm involving controlling fungus gnats with mosquito bits. Any updates? I am testing BTI effects with a dairy cow colony. So, yeah, this bacterium is considered an organic pesticide because it is based on a bacteria. It is a live bacterial culture that you add to your whatever you're adding it to. Some people add them to their ponds to control mosquitoes, but you can also use them to control fungus gnats. So I tested them some time ago in my ivory millipede colony. And what I did basically is I would soak the bits and then I would pour them into the substrate to hydrate the millipede substrate, and I noticed a sharp decline in fungus gnats. But I didn't know at the time that there had been some studies that showed that long-term BTI could be dangerous with invertebrates and reduce their populations, at least in the wild. They'd done longitudinal studies, so maybe after a year there's no apparent effect, but after 2 years the biodiversity of the invertebrate community in the area was decreased. And so that was worrisome. And so for a year or so, I didn't have any problems with the colony and the fungus gnats. It did decrease the fungus gnats. But then, for no apparent reason at all, and I've kept and bred, ivory millipedes before successfully, they started to die off. And nothing I could do seemed to fix it. And so I'm not sure if that is why, but I wonder if it is. And that's a concern I have. So I can't really say that that's necessarily the cause, but it could be, because more than one source seems to be indicating that could be an issue, so I have stopped using it. I'm now working with a different type of biocontrol involving a rove beetle that eats fungus gnats, so I'm going to be posting a video on that fairly soon. So hopefully that is an update for you on that. And thank you everyone for joining in. Straya Squamata. Yeah, Clint's reptile room is so fun. I'm really glad that I was able to bring my family. They got to see things they've never seen before. And I got to see things I've never seen before there either, because there's always something new at Clint's reptile room. And I've been several times, but every time it is fantastic. Never gets old. And I can't wait to go back, and I'll be going back in a few weeks. So thank you everyone, and have a great day or evening, whatever time of day it is for you. And stay healthy and stay safe, everybody.